Susan, the outdoor unit of the air conditioner is missing.
Do you think someone like you needs an air conditioner? Our snow casks.
Is saying so, in the midst of a scorching midsummer heat wave, my mother-in-law disposed of the air conditioner's outdoor unit without my consent while I was at work. Are you telling me to endure this scorching heat without air conditioning? And of course, right? Well then, I'm going to Singapore starting tomorrow, so take care of things at home while I'm away. My mother-in-law left the house with a skip in her step, carrying a large suitcase. She appeared to be so satisfied, harassing me.
I'll get you for this. I'll make sure you regret it for sure.
3 days later, the mother-in-law, who had returned home, frantically called me.
And phew. No way. This can't be right. Yes, that's right. It's all a result of your own actions.
I was wrong. I'm so sorry.
She said, sobbing and crying hysterically. My name is Urina. I'm 28 years old, working as a caregiver. My husband is John, who is 2 years older than me. John is a doctor who works at a welfare facility. Our journey together dates back about 5 years. John is incredibly dedicated to his work, and he was beloved by both the patients and the staff due to his kindness and diligence. I was 23 at the time, still a new employee, and I had so much to learn.
Is it okay for someone like me to keep working here?
Then it was John who talked to me. He quietly came over and said, "Are you okay? Are you tired? You'll feel better if you have something sweet."
That's right. And the player is... It's a candy. It's delicious.
Just like an Osaka auntie. John had a lot of candy in his white coat. I couldn't help but laugh at the cute side of the popular doctor.
He looks you when he laugh. Hang in there, rookie.
John and waved as he went back to work. Is there a woman who wouldn't fall for such a kind and cute doctor? I couldn't help but think that way and quickly fell in love with him. Folks, once I know I like someone, I go all in, so made a strong approach to John. John finally succumbed to my persistence, and we started dating. And then, a year later, unproposed to me, and we decided to get married. I thought a happy married life was about to begin. However, something happened when we went to visit my in-laws for the introduction.
You see, my mom, she has a bit of a strong character. I'm sorry if she acts rude. Don't worry about what she says. My husband had told me in advance.
It's with apprehension. I rang the doorbell. Soon after, my in-laws came out.
Oh, John, it's been a while. How have you been? Have you been staying well?
Yeah, it's been a while. I'm doing well. How about you? Mom and Dad?
We're doing good. We're so happy to see your face after such a long time.
I couldn't help but wonder as my mother-in-law didn't even attempt to look at me. Hi! Nice to meet you. I gathered up the courage and spoke to my mother-in-law. She frowned and finally looked at me, but she didn't say anything. She quickly turned her head back to John and put a bright smile on her face.
Come on in. John, come on in.
It seemed like my mother-in-law had no interest in anyone except my husband. I already felt discouraged by my mother-in-law's attitude. But once we were inside the house, I met my father-in-law. I'm Irina. I'd like to introduce myself as John and I are getting married.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming all this way today. Don't be too formal. Just make yourself at home.
My father-in-law warmly smiled and welcomed me with a friendly demeanor. He was quite the opposite of my mother-in-law. He asked me a lot of questions to make sure I am included and help to ease the atmosphere. He was gentle and kind, just like my husband. However, my mother-in-law, on the other hand, continued to show no interest in me. She did speak to me once, but it was just to say, "You don't look that impressive." After that, she made no effort to speak with me. My husband and father-in-law tried to mediate, and the day eventually ended. However, I was feeling anxious. That night, I asked my husband, "Does your mother hate me?" I couldn't talk to her at all.
And he responded, "No, that's not it. Mom just feels lonely because she feels like she is losing her only son. It's not your fault."
I replied, "I hope so. I'm worried about the future."
Ozzy reassured me, "It's going to be okay. And we want to involve with my parents that much even after we get married. Look, the
But both our home and my in-laws' home were quite far from each other. So we would only see them on occasions like New Year's. If it was just occasional interaction, I figured I could manage. It's the road to marriage with John was long and filled with ups and downs, but we managed to get married. We now have a 3-year-old daughter named Jessica, and the three of us, Asti, John, Jessica, and I, were living a happy life. However, our peaceful days started to crumble from a single statement from my husband. My dad's health has been deteriorating, and my mom is struggling to take care of him. She's been asking if we could move in with them for a while. What do you think? My father-in-law had suffered an accident 2 years ago that left his lower body paralyzed. It was heartbreaking to see such a kind-hearted man in this condition. Actually, right now, my mother-in-law was the primary caregiver for him, but both of them were already 55 years old, not quite young anymore. I had already heard from my husband that my father-in-law's inability to work had increased the burden on my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law had been trying to take care of my father-in-law on her own, but it started becoming a burden both physically and financially. She had tearfully pleaded with my husband to live together, and as much as I disliked my mother-in-law, I couldn't just ignore her desperate request. Okay, I understand. I'm a caregiver too, so I'll pitch in if there's anything I can help with. I really care about your dad, so I want to support him. Are you sure? Yes. Can you just tell her to please keep in her mind that I have my own work and taking care of our child, so I'll help within my limits. If you ever feel it's too much or find something unpleasant, just let me know right away. And just like that, we started to live with my in-laws. Irina, I'm so sorry. We're making you live with us. It's all my fault for having that accident. We must be a nuisance to you too. I'm truly sorry. Both of them bowed deeply to us. No, please rest your heads. I work as a caregiver, so caregiving is my strong suit. If you ever have any problems or need help, please don't hesitate to let me know. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Well, my father-in-law's demeanor remained as gentle as ever. I noticed a change in my mother-in-law's behavior. Unlike when we first got married, she seemed more reserved, and it gave me hope that we could make things work. However, a few days later, my mother-in-law began to show her true colors. When I came home from work, I would hear, "Hey, Urina, make dinner quickly. I'm hungry." Dad just used the toilet. Hurry and change his diaper. "This place is dirty. Did you clean properly?" My mother-in-law treated me with disdain, leaving all the meal prep, cleaning, and caregiving for my father-in-law to me, while she frequently went out to enjoy herself. My father-in-law spent most of his time in his room and was unaware of her behavior. Additionally, my husband often comes home late from work and has many night shifts as a doctor, so I spent most of the time with my mother-in-law and my daughter. There was another issue that posed a challenge. My mother-in-law had a wide range of food preferences. She disliked raw fish, eggplant, green bell peppers, and cheese, to name a few. Even with the same ingredients, she could eat tomato stew or ketchup, but she couldn't eat plain tomatoes. There were many specific preferences and variations depending on the cooking method, and it became too much to remember, so I had to write it all down in notes. Since eating meals adjusted to my mother-in-law's preferences led to an imbalanced nutritional intake, I had to prepare a separate menu for her after we had made our own meals. This became unexpectedly stressful. Additionally, my mother-in-law disliked pastries, so I had to serve her meals like egg omelets, salmon, rice, and miso soup for breakfast. I needed to create additional menus for her for each meal, which added a significant burden, considering I had other responsibilities as a mother and a caregiver at work. I figured that I couldn't continue like this without wearing myself down, so I decided to ask my mother-in-law for assistance. "I'm Susan. I also have work and a child to take care of. Could you help out a bit with meals and laundry?" "Sam, what kind of nonsense are you saying? You're just a caregiver, right? My son is a doctor. Even from that perspective, our positions are different. Can't you at least respect a doctor's mother?" I was angry at her condescending attitude towards caregivers and the notion of being a doctor's mother. What did that have to do with anything? I believe John has already talked to you about this before we moved in together, right? About sharing the household chores. You're so noisy. You, just a mere wife, are being annoying. My mother-in-law covered her ears with her hands and refused to listen to what I was saying. Furthermore, she always chose times when my father-in-law and husband weren't around to voice her complaints and snide remarks. It seemed she didn't want my father-in-law and husband to find out that she was bullying me. However, I couldn't stay silent any longer. I gathered my courage and decided to talk to my husband about it.
Your mother, She's pushing everything onto me. She doesn't listen to anything I say. And she won't even make breakfast for herself during the busy morning hours. Can you please talk to her about this at least?
My mother can be really troublesome. I'm sorry for causing any inconvenience. I'll talk to her about it.
At those words, my husband immediately went to address the issue with my mother-in-law. After some time, it seemed that she had been persuaded by him and came over to me.
Urina, I'm sorry for causing troubles to you. I heard from John just now. And it seems I've been relying on you too much since you've come here. I apologize.
She said this and offered her apologies. She promised to be more proactive starting from tomorrow. Utterly specifics. Honestly, her unusual willingness made me a bit suspicious.
Oh, no worries. She said it would be great if we could live together while supporting each other, I replied.
Indeed, thank you.
The 10 receptions exudations. The next morning, as promised, my mother-in-law woke up earlier than usual and prepared breakfast. Seeing her like that, my husband and I felt a sense of relief, hoping that we could finally live together in harmony with cooperation. However, a few days later, my husband was on a night shift, so he wouldn't be home all day. After finishing work and picking up my daughter from kindergarten, I hurried home to prepare dinner. That's when my mother-in-law came up to me and suddenly stepped on my foot.
Ow, ouch. Hey, what are you doing?
Oh, sorry. It wasn't intentional, but I didn't notice your foot here. Kinum.
She laughed while saying that. Notice a foot. There was no way that was possible. It was a clear act of harassment towards me.
You obviously noticed, right? Did you do it on purpose?
Oh, come on! You have a dirty mind, don't you? I wouldn't do it on purpose, right? Maybe this is a punishment for someone who tattled on John?
My mother-in-law chuckled while saying that. Oh, yeah, I see. She was still upset about that. I had talked to my husband about her.
Tattled? I simply told the truth.
You're such a terrible daughter-in-law. Hun got mad at me because of you. And don't tell my husband either. It'll get more complicated. You do understand what will happen if you tattle again, right?
Her words were laced with a clear threat. I was completely overwhelmed by her intense gaze. Thank I understand. Him. Well, as long as you do. I was too exasperated to respond any further. If she didn't want to be exposed, she shouldn't have done it in the first place. I tried to let it go, thinking it was over after she stepped on my foot. However, one day, when I returned from work and went to turn on the air conditioner in my room, I reached for the remote control. Up item circlings, I pressed the power button on it as usual, but it wouldn't turn on no matter how many times I pressed it. But it was a scorching hot day in August, so the heat was suffocating without the air conditioner. Mom, it's so hot. I'm sorry. Jessica, just wait a moment. I was worried if the air conditioner was broken. My daughter was suffering in the heat. Strangely, my mother-in-law was smirking while watching us. But something was off. That expression on her face hinted that she had done something. I went to check the outdoor unit on the balcony, thinking that my mother-in-law might have stuffed something in it. Believe it or not, the outdoor unit had completely disappeared. Not just from my room, but also from my daughter's room and the living room. However, the units in my husband's and father-in-law's rooms were untouched. The only person who could have done this was my mother-in-law, Susan. The outdoor units for the air conditioners are missing. I was furious and my face turned bright red. This just went too far. I couldn't believe it. Something as extravagant as air conditioners is unnecessary for someone like you, right? That's why I had a technician come and take them away today. Unearns well, so we can't indulge you. It made absolutely no sense to take such an action for such bizarre reasons. Furthermore, she had removed the units from my daughter's room. It's an ration for us. I sleep with my 3-year-old daughter in my room, but she often played in her room. You want us to endure this heat wave without air conditioning? Of course, right? By the way, I'm leaving to Singapore with my friends now, so take care of the house without air conditioning. Each to enjoy the discomfort, okay? She left the house, leaving my father-in-law, my daughter, and me behind. She even left the house with a skip in her step, appeared to be as if she took great pleasure in being able to harass me while carrying a large suitcase. I'll never forgive this. But remember it? My mother-in-law's trip is for 2 nights and 3 days, and she won't be back for the next 3 days. During this time, I took some action. 3 days later, my husband, daughter, father-in-law, and I had all left the in-laws' his house together. In fact, my younger brother had purchased a condo at a young age and was living there but was currently working abroad and didn't have any immediate plans to return to Japan. So, I asked my brother if we could stay there until we found our next home, and he agreed to let us. My mother-in-law, who had returned from Singapore, started calling us in a panic. Yurina, what's going on here? Why is no one at home? Oh, I laughed, because it seemed like you really didn't want to live with me. Hey! Why on earth would you do something like that? What about John and Jessica? And Daniel isn't there either. John, Jessica, and even Daniel Sam all left the house with me. There's no way John and Daniel would do such a thing. Besides, all the furniture and appliances are gone from the house. What on earth is going on here? She hysterically screamed. What goes around comes around. Yes, during the 3 days, while my mother-in-law was abroad. Action, I was exposed to all the various harassment and mistreatment I had endured from her over the years. It's my husband and father-in-law. Hearing all of it, my father-in-law was the angriest.
A woman, even with young kids around, I can't believe it. Irina, I'm truly sorry.
No, it's not your fault at all. Daniel, I have a great idea. Eh? Are you sure about this? Doing something like that? Yeah, I've already made up my mind. Just with those words, my father-in-law sold all the furniture and appliances that were in the house to a recycling shop. Many of them were already quite old, so they weren't needed. My father-in-law wanted to make my mother-in-law regret her actions more than anything. It's at that, the house had nothing with nobody living there when my mother-in-law returned home. The house had transformed into an empty house. It's no wonder that my mother-in-law was panicking when she called. Hutchins, you didn't tell Daniel and John everything, did you? Yes, that's correct. Both your husband and John were quite angry. I specifically told you not to say anything, didn't I? It's all a result of your own actions. My mother-in-law knew that my father-in-law could be quite frightening once he was angry and would never change his decisions. She was panicking, especially since she didn't want my father-in-law to know the whole story. Then my father-in-law said, "Irina, please let me talk to her for a moment," and took the phone. "Oh, Susan, you really did it, huh? You've been quite a bully to Irina, who's taken care of everything." "No, that's not true. That person is lying." "Oh, Irina is lying. I don't really believe that. By the way, Susan, who did you go on an overseas trip with?"
Who I went with? What do you mean? I went with a friend. But that's not the point now, is it?
I, too, found my father-in-law's question a bit puzzling. A friend. You're still a liar. Actually know something.
What do you mean?
The person you went on the trip with was a man, right? I've actually been suspicious of your frequent outings for a while. I even consulted an acquaintance who's a lawyer, and lots of evidence came up.
What? Why? This can't be true, right?
No, I want a divorce. Fix the crime statement from my father-in-law left both my husband and me utterly astonished.
Divorce?
Yeah, that's right. Taking advantage of my inability to move, you had plenty of fun, it seems. I can't deal with someone like that. So please get a divorce. I already filled out a divorce paper. You'll find them in my room. I couldn't believe it. My 55-year-old mother-in-law was having an affair. No wonder she had been going out so frequently.
I was the one who did wrong. I'm sorry.
She sobbed and screamed. However, my father-in-law seemed resolute, and her plea appeared to fall on deaf ears. It's decided. Oh, and don't you think that furniture and appliances were a bit too extravagant for you? That's why I got rid of them. My father-in-law simply repeated the words that were said to me by my mother-in-law. She seemed taken aback by the familiar words, and for a moment she was at a loss for words. You wait. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She seemed quite flustered, repeatedly apologizing. But my father-in-law ignored her and abruptly hung up the phone. And for him, there was no way to forgive what my mother-in-law had done. My husband was shocked by the sudden divorce, but he had an accepting look on his face. Afterward, the divorce between my mother-in-law and father-in-law was finalized. My mother-in-law repeatedly cried out, saying, "I can't live without John and Daniel." However, John and my father-in-law had decided they would never listen to her again. But despite John's repeated warnings for her to stop her mistreatment of me, she never listened to his words. It seems that John had reached his limit. But for my father-in-law, he had suffered from an accident that left him with disabilities, while my mother-in-law had left him unattended and engaged in an affair. Given these circumstances, my father-in-law couldn't forgive her. So abandoned by her beloved son and husband, my mother-in-law was left all alone in that empty house. I heard a rumor that her affair partner was also a married man, making it a double affair. She's facing demands for compensation from both my father-in-law and the spouse of her affair partner. It's all the consequences from her own acts. As for us, we decided to build a new home. When we informed my father-in-law about our decision, he contributed a substantial amount of money from his savings to support us.
I've caused a lot of trouble to both John and you. I'm truly sorry. It's not much, but it's my way of making amends.
This is not necessary. It's like I said before, you haven't done anything wrong. Daniel, and it's not just the three of us. Let's live together. At first, my father-in-law was surprised by my words, but he appeared to be very happy, and even tears welled up in his eyes. I can't believe you're saying that. John, you've got a wonderful wife. I know. She's such an amazing wife. Like she said, let us all live together. Oh, correction? Thank you. Thank you so much. The four of us started living together. It's been a year since that day. After that, my father-in-law continued his rehabilitation diligently, not wanting to cause any trouble to us. He learned to walk and manage things like going to the bathroom on his own. Jessica is now 4 years old. Jessica, happy birthday! We all celebrated our daughter's birthday together. It was truly a happy time.